the range cooperate cable. And one more time, go for launch. GC, got it. Go.
Hey guys, it's me Waffles, and in this tutorial I'm going to be showing you how to get to orbit in Kerbal Space Program. So, this is already assuming you have a rocket that can get to orbit, but you can't get it to orbit because you don't know how, or are struggling to figure out how it even works. So here you can see I have a KWR Century Titan Block 1B, which is a rocket I designed using the KWR rocket mod. And it really doesn't matter if it's stock or modded because we're just talking about getting to orbit, not actually building a rocket. So the concept is ubiquitous. So what you're going to want to do is go into the vehicle assembly building, load up your rocket, check the staging, and then press the launch button on the top right. Now, I first learned how to do orbits and stuff like that by watching Scott Manley. He made really good tutorials, and so it's like, hey, why don't I make my own tutorials? And so I made a few, but those were like 2 years ago, so now these are updating those tutorials because they're in dire need of some update. They were also a lot worse quality, and I didn't explain things as well at that time. Alright, so now we have our rocket on the launch pad, and what you're going to want to do is turn on SAS. I call it stability augmentation. You could call it stability assist system, whatever you want. All it does is helps your rocket stay on its path and also gives you the maneuver nodes or targeting nodes so you can use those during its flight. You're going to want to make sure it's set to stability assist because that's all we need right now. And obviously, in order to get to orbit, we're going to have to launch a rocket. So let's start with that. And so, what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to press the D button or whatever makes your rocket go to the right. D is for the default key that I'm setting. Because we don't want to go straight. We want to go into space kind of at an angle. That way, our suborbital trajectory is closer to orbit than it is leaving the planet. Because going straight makes it a lot harder to get into orbit because our trajectory is higher than it is wider. But by going sideways, we get a wider than it is higher trajectory, which makes finishing the orbit and circularizing it much more easy and less complicated. So you're going to want to go from about 200 to 400 meters a second while you're in the atmosphere, because if you go any faster than that, you're kind of just wasting your fuel on drag. You'll be experiencing a lot of drag. And so, over the course, you just want to keep tilting it sideways more, maybe be at like 90, like the halfway point on the ball by the time you're about to leave the atmosphere. And you kind of want to keep following the prograde, which is the green circle. That's the actual like velocity direction your rocket is going. The orange marker is what actual direction of your rocket is pointing. So that's where my rocket is pointing based on where it's actually going. If we zoom out, we can see this. That's a map of our suborbital trajectory, the planet, and orbits that are going on. And you can access that by clicking toggle map. As you can see, our orbit is wider than it is taller, which is what we want. And now our first stage burned out, so now we're going to initiate our second stage. Now we're going to tilt sideways even more so we can make our orbit much wider. And now you're going to want to watch the map part. And as you can see, our apoapse, or highest point in the orbit, is getting higher, which is what we want. But we also want the orbit itself to be getting wider, as you can see it is here. The closer you are to the horizon, the quicker your orbit will become wider. So you're going to want it to be at like half blue, half orange at this stage, or at this point in time. And now we're going to throttle down completely because here we're going to add a maneuver node to circularize and finalize our orbit. Because you can see we're still on a suborbital trajectory. If we followed this through, we would just end up back on the planet, which is not what we're aiming for, obviously. So, in order to add a maneuver node, you're going to want to do it at the apoapse, highest point in orbit. You're going to want to click right in the center. Left click right there and click Add a Maneuver. And then you're going to drag the maneuver node to prograde out. We don't want to be concerned about any of those other nodes. Those are going to be for another video, which you can view at the top right corner. It's about maneuver nodes. So we're going to drag the prograde out and see this little parapips, which is the lowest point in orbit forming over there. We're going to wait until that switches places with our apoapse. So just keep dragging that slowly, and then they switch places. That means the orbit is circularized, because now the highest point of orbit is now over there. And now you can see that we finished the maneuver. A new area has appeared. We have a speed. This is how much speed we're going to have to gain, or velocity we'll have to gain in order to get this whole orbit. This estimated burn time is how much we're going to have to burn, or how long we're going to have to thrust in order to get that orbit. And this is based on your most recent thrust. So since we are at full throttle, this is calculated out based on us being at full throttle. So when we're doing the maneuver, we will be doing it at full throttle. And then there's a node T-, which is how long it will be until we actually get to the maneuver node, which is represented by that ball right there. So what we're going to want to do first is click on the maneuver node on your selection of nodes, and it will automatically, if you have stability augmentation system on, align you with that. So we're just going to wait for that to happen. And there we go. Now, what we're going to want to do is we're going to want to time warp relatively close on it, which you can left click and left click on warp here. It's going to warp us relatively close to our orbit. Orbital maneuver. Alright, so we're 1 minute out. So what we want to do is we're going to want to burn half in T- and half in T+. So that means we would start our burn at about 4 seconds. Because if we started at 7 seconds, our orbit is going to be lopsided in one direction a bit. Because we're not completely burning all the way through T- and T+. So it kind of gives us a lopsided orbit. So if we equalize the burn between being behind the node and being in front of the node, we will get a more circularized orbit. Alright, so we're going to wait until 4 seconds comes around. You can fast forward a bit more. And then we're going to punch it full throttle. 5, punch it. And you want to wait until it turns to a green check mark, which means you've gotten all the velocity you needed to complete that orbit. And you can click on it, and it goes away. And now, you are in orbit around Kerbal. So, if you were able to do that, give yourself a little pat on the back, because you deserve it. Now, this is probably the most simple and easy way to get to orbit. There are ways of doing it without having to use maneuver nodes or anything if you're very skilled, like me, but this is for obviously beginners, and we're going over the beginner basics. And if you wanted to deorbit, all you do is go here, add a maneuver, and just drag the opposite of the program, which is the retrograde, down until you intersect the planet. And that way you can splash down or land if you have a crew module with parachutes. And that's how you deorbit. And that's pretty much it. As concerning the orbital maneuvers, I'll be making the orbital maneuvers with the nodes and what they're for. I'll be making a video about that later, which you can view on the top right. That'll be up there. And other than that, that's it. That's how to get to orbit in Kerbal Space Program. If you got any questions or comments, feel free to hit me up in the comment section, and I'll be glad to address any of those. And that's all I got for you. So this is Waffles signing out. Have fun Kerbal it.